Paris, 1794. The square is silent. The guillotine is ready. Today, the man to be executed is not a king, not a noble, not a traitor. Today, the man facing death is the one who legalized executions. Yesterday, he signed thousands of death warrants. Today, his own name is on the list. His name was Maximilien Robespierre. He did not see himself as a monster. He said, "Virtue without terror is powerless." He believed he was saving the revolution. He chose fear as a tool of justice and turned terror into law. But one day, something changed inside the convention. A silence fell. Everyone understood the same truth. If Robespierre survives today, tomorrow, it will be us. And something rare happened in history. Fear created unity. Robespierre was arrested. His jaw was shattered. He could no longer speak. The man who had decided the fate of thousands was suddenly silent. One question remained. Was Robespierre a ruthless tyrant or the revolution's own devouring conscience? This is the story of justice. Fact 1. Virtue must come with terror. Robespierre believed that virtue alone was not enough to protect a revolution. In his view, terror was not cruelty, but justice put into action. He argued that virtue without terror was powerless, and terror without virtue was destructive. For Robespierre, fear was a weapon, a necessary tool to defend the people from enemies within the state. Executions were not acts of personal revenge. They were, in his mind, a moral duty. This belief became the foundation of the reign of terror, where mercy disappeared and justice became absolute. Fact 2. Against the death penalty. Then he used it at the start of the French Revolution. Robespierre was strongly opposed to the death penalty. He argued that the state had no moral right to take a human life. Execution, in his eyes, was cruelty, a weapon of tyranny, not justice. But as the revolution deepened, his principles began to shift. Enemies multiplied. Fear spread. The Republic felt threatened on all sides. Robespierre convinced himself that extraordinary danger required extraordinary measures. The man who once condemned executions became the one who authorized thousands of death sentences. In the end, the punishment he once rejected became the tool that defined his rule. Fact 3. The incorruptible. Robespierre was known as the incorruptible. He lived simply. He rejected luxury. He refused bribes and political favors. In a time of chaos and corruption, this made him dangerous. Many believed he could not be bought, that his loyalty belonged only to the Republic and to his ideals, but his moral purity became a weapon. Anyone who disagreed with him could be labeled corrupt, immoral, or an enemy of virtue. And once virtue was defined by one man, opposition became a crime. Robespierre's honesty made him powerful and terrifying. Fact 4. He sent his closest friends to the guillotine. Robespierre did not fall because of his enemies. He fell because he turned against his friends. Men who had fought beside him, Danton, Desmoulins, voices of the revolution, were suddenly declared enemies of the people. To Robespierre, friendship meant nothing when virtue was at stake. Anyone who questioned the terror was questioning the Republic, and questioning the Republic was a crime punishable by death. One by one, his closest allies were arrested, tried, and executed. By destroying his friends, Robespierre destroyed the last people who might have saved him. Fact 5. Robespierre never saw himself as a tyrant. He did not believe he had seized power by force, because everything was done by law. France was ruled by the Committee of Public Safety, and Robespierre became its most powerful voice. Decisions were not made by a single man. They were voted on. Death sentences followed trials. Documents were signed. Procedures were followed. Everything was legal. But there was a problem. The law itself was built on fear. Under the new revolutionary laws, suspicion was enough. Evidence was optional. The right to defense nearly disappeared. The term enemy of the people became so broad that almost anyone could fall into it. To Robespierre, this was not tyranny. It was the defense of the Republic. He believed that in extraordinary times, ordinary justice could not survive. If the state was to live, the law had to be severe. And so, a strange system was born in France. A dictator without a throne. Violence sanctioned by law. Fear applied in the name of the people. Robespierre did not wear a crown. He never called himself a ruler, but he decided who lived and who died, and history gave him a rare title, the legal dictator. Fact 6. Robespierre did not want to destroy faith. He wanted to replace it. During the French Revolution, the Catholic Church was seen as an enemy of the Republic, a symbol of monarchy, privilege, and control. Churches were closed. Priests were persecuted. Traditional religion collapsed. But Robespierre believed that a society without belief would fall into chaos. So he proposed something radical, a new state religion. It was called the cult of the supreme being. This new faith rejected the church, but not God. Robespierre believed in a higher moral force, a supreme being that rewarded virtue and punished vice. Morality, not scripture, stood at its center. In 1794, he organized massive public ceremonies. Crowds filled the streets of Paris. Artificial mountains were built. Music played. Speeches echoed through the city. And at the center of it all stood Robespierre himself. Not as a priest, but as the voice of moral authority. To many it felt unsettling. A politician defining morality. A revolutionary standing above the crowd, deciding what virtue meant. What was meant to unite the Republic only deepened suspicion. People began to whisper, was Robespierre defending the revolution, or was he replacing God with himself? The new religion did not save him. Within weeks, the man who tried to redefine faith would be accused, arrested, and silenced. The revolution had rejected kings, and now it rejected prophets too. Fact 7. Robespierre did not see the guillotine as a symbol of cruelty. He saw it as progress. Before the revolution, executions were slow, brutal, and unequal. The poor were tortured. The powerful were spared suffering. The guillotine changed that. To Robespierre, it was fast, efficient, and equal. One blade, one strike, no prolonged pain. In his mind, this was mercy, the same death for everyone, rich or poor, noble or commoner. The guillotine became the physical expression of revolutionary justice. Cold, impersonal, unavoidable. But what was meant to reduce suffering ended up normalizing death. Executions became routine. Crowds gathered. Names were read. And the blade fell, again and again. Robespierre believed he had humanized execution. History would remember it differently. Fact 8. The Reign of Terror began with his name. History does not remember the Reign of Terror as an accident. It remembers it with a name. Robespierre. Between 1793 and 1794, France entered one of the darkest chapters of the Revolution. This period would later be called the Reign of Terror, and Robespierre became its most recognizable face. Under his influence, fear was no longer a reaction. It became a system. Special revolutionary courts were created. Trials were accelerated. Defense was limited. Verdicts were swift. The guillotine worked every day. Not because of chaos, but because of organization. Robespierre believed terror was not a failure of justice, but its final form in times of danger. He argued that the Republic was surrounded by enemies, foreign armies, internal traitors, hidden conspirators. To save the revolution, he said, fear had to be used before fear destroyed the state. Soon, suspicion alone was enough to die. A careless word, a wrong look, a neighbor's accusation. Paris learned to whisper. Entire cities fell silent. Thousands were executed. Not all of them guilty, not all of them enemies, but all of them victims of a system built on absolute certainty. The terror did not begin with mobs. Fact 9, his own fear destroyed him. 30 seconds. Robespierre did not fall because he lost power. He fell because he lost trust. As the terror intensified, he began to fear everyone, even his closest allies. Every silence felt like a conspiracy. Every disagreement looked like betrayal. The men around him realized something terrifying. If Robespierre survived, they would be next. Fact 10. He died by the guillotine. He helped normalize. In July 1794, Robespierre was arrested. The system he created turned against him. His jaw was shattered. Whether by a bullet or a fall, he could no longer speak. No speech, no defense, no mercy. The man who had signed thousands of death sentences was denied the very rights he had taken from others.